How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, great discussion today. Today, we're going to be talking about 4 characteristics of a high-performing team. My guest today will be Luis Soto. He's been in a leadership position, still is in a leadership position. And these 4 characteristics I found through a video by David Burkus. And I think these 4 characteristics do relate to correction. So what me and Soto are going to do are we're going to take these characteristics and then we're going to apply them to our world, which most people don't do. They take these theories and they apply them to business organizations. But I believe some of these theories can easily be applied to what we do in corrections. Now, guys, the show is sponsored by 3 entities. One is American Military University. If you guys are looking for that degree, seek higher education, check out American Military University. Not only do they support me on Tier Talk, but they also support the corrections profession. We also have Guardian RFID, from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based businesses and artificial intelligence. Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianrfid.com for more information. Guys, also check out their YouTube channel because we do submit correctional videos to Guardian RFID's YouTube channel. And we also have the WRAP. If you guys don't know what the WRAP is, that's WRAP. I have a link to that in the description, a good video that shows you exactly what the WRAP does. But controlling combative subjects quickly in an upright position so they can breathe has never been more important. Departments such as Washington, D.C., LA County, San Diego County, and hundreds of other facilities across the U.S. trust and believe in the WRAP restraint. Go to saferestraints.com for contact information and mention Tier Talk to receive instructor training at no cost. Lower liability for your facility and your personnel with the WRAP. Give the WRAP a call today, 800-WRAP-911. All right, Soto, what's up, man?
Hey, how we doing, guys? Welcome.
It's been a while. You want to give us some updates?
Absolutely, guys. We are working hard to continue in our career, and our profession is one of the best ones in out there. I can just say it outright. I continue to work with the Department of Corrections on the side. I'm in halfway houses. I'm now acting director at one of your assessment centers. I'm still working on my doctorate, trying to get that finished, hopefully this year. Wish me luck on that. And I'm glad to be on the show again with this great and specific topic that we love to talk about.
Yeah, and I think it's a good topic. 4 characteristics of a high-performing team. Guys, we may be appearing at a conference in Wisconsin in which not only we're going to have panel discussions, but the next day we're going to have breakout sessions. And this could be a piece of what's going to be covered at the breakout section from Soto in a class. I believe we're doing something on leadership. Correct, Soto?
Absolutely. We're going to take care of this and give pointers and this is what we strive for, right? To have a good high-performance team that makes our jobs a lot easier as managers or, as that leader. So I can't wait to start this.
Guys, by the way, these characteristics are they go further than just talent. One of the notes that were mentioned in this video is that talent on the wrong team will either drag the talent down, or if you have everybody looking for attention, they wind up starting to stumble over each other. And it also talks about diversity too. But again, if you're looking for a team to be diverse, you have to build on trust and respect for each other, which would be one of the areas, the characteristics that we look for. So the first characteristics that's defined by David Burkus, and I believe he got this from a study from Google or something. Google did some study with their workers, and they came up with these 4 characteristics for a high-performing team. So the first characteristic is, and I'll have Soto go first, and I'll complement. We'll kind of work together on this. And what we're going to do, as I said, is we're going to kind of give you an understanding of what that characteristic is, and then through our experience, apply this. Now, by the way, Soto doesn't know what's coming at him right now. This is how we do it. Yes. We think on the fly because I think this is the best way to build on experience and really have a dialogue that evolves. So, characteristic number 1. Okay, so to define roles and responsibilities. How does that play out to a high-performing team?
So this is one of the main principles of when you want to get your team up and running and being a very well-oiled machine, you have to think about it that way. You have to define what roles and what responsibilities are actually in your team, right? So if you were to consider this as a basketball team, right? A basketball team needs to gel. right? We have our point guard, we have our shooting guards, we have our centers. Everybody has a role and a responsibility so that the team can gel, can work together, and you have to achieve your ultimate goal, right? When we talk about corrections, let's talk about a manpower sergeant or a general assignment supervisor that has a team together that may have to respond to codes, may have to respond to disturbances in the facility. You need to know what each individual person is going to do, what their responsibility in an active role when you are responding to a unit, to a disturbance, right? What's the leader doing? What's the subordinates doing? What are their responsibilities when we find, let's say, you're running into a fight, or you're running into a code of a medical emergency, or you're running into a disturbance. It could be anything, a fight, riot. Everyone needs to know exactly what their place, what their role is, what their responsibility is, so things don't really, overlap each other, even though they might, but everyone has their strategic goal and strategic place to do. It's something that every efficient team has.
And this is not only departmental, it goes cross-departmental, because as Soto said, we have our responsibilities within our department, within our assigned department, but we also have our responsibilities into the bigger picture and how these different departments interact. And the key thing here is not only knowing your responsibilities, but also knowing the responsibilities of the people that are around you, because that helps you better fit in. And I like when you said the basketball metaphor, because believe it or not, guys, if you have a leader that doesn't really understand, and we'll get to strengths and weaknesses, but doesn't really understand where you're best at, where you're most gifted at, they start putting you in positions that you're really not that good at. And again, when it comes to basketball, it's like putting a center as a point guard. Yeah, you have talent, but your talent is usually pretty much specific to that being a center. And then the other thing is, with the defined roles and responsibilities, we also have to do updates on that regularly. Let me explain what that means too, because I watched a few videos on this. So we all kind of know what our responsibilities are, but at any time, those responsibilities could shift. It could literally shift. Like, it depends on, we're working right now in corrections where everything's changing, things are evolving, and, the responsibilities that you had yesterday may not necessarily be the responsibilities that you have today. Now, the biggest concern here is when there's a shift in that responsibility, and let's say but you fail to tell the people that are around you. Well, the problem is there's going to be a pivot. You're going to create a pivot, but the problem is those people around you aren't going to know. I find that to be at the highest level. I find that where there are changes that are happening, and I think the department has kind of shifted in what they want those responsibilities to be, but it's not being translated right to the front line. So the problem is that the front line, not understanding what these changes may be, they're still trying to operate on what they're used to. And the problem is the end result is nowhere near where it needs to be based on the pivot. So what's your thoughts on that updating of responsibilities and kind of dealing with the changes along the way?
So we are in a perfect example, unfortunately, because of this pandemic that's happening, where everything is kind of changing on the fly, right? We're getting new instructions, sometimes on a daily basis, of how to deal with this pandemic, and especially in corrections, how to quarantine, how to cohort, how to deal with individuals, how to get our schedules together so that we can still afford the ability to have, recreation or fresh air breaks or stuff that is required, but at the same time be able to have a facility that's safe and that it's doing its best to try to control this pandemic that's happening. So it changes, right? Also, think about the things that are happening throughout the United States as far as, moving away from this solitary confinement in our facilities, right? That's making it hard. Like, even our disciplinary is changing, right? How we discipline our inmate population when they are, we're moving towards a gentler side, right? But it's hard for the front line to understand that, while there's pressures from outside of corrections that make us change our policies on a sometimes daily, monthly basis, that it has to be communicated to the lower and those ranks that are actually doing the day-to-day activities. You know, how do I feel as an officer now that I used to write a blue sheet or charge on a particular inmate that is not doing what he's supposed to be doing, and I know that in the past they were being, you know, sent to an administrative segregation or for a number of months or even years, and now that has been changed to a lesser sanction where they're only out there for a couple of weeks. You know, it has an effect on the staff and how they work, because now, you know, you're like, wait a minute, I just wrote this guy up, he got disciplined, and he's right back on my unit. How do I deal with that? So you have to know that these roles and responsibilities are changing constantly, and we have to know how to adapt to them.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, I love what Soto's saying, because these are some of these responsibilities, these changes from the agency are systematic. So what we need to do at the highest of levels is find a way to communicate that downwards so everybody understands how they're going to be affected. So the sad thing is that even though we may, let's say, okay, we're going to focus more on programming, and all we do is talk to the people that are involved in programming. Well, who helps facilitate the programming, you know? And, you know, there's so many components to even just getting the programs out there that it's more than just the one department. So now people are going to have to make a pivot, and how that's communicated, how that's understood by the people that are involved truly does matter, because they're the ones that are going to be carrying out these changes. So again, one of the big concerns when it comes to defining roles and responsibilities is that if it does change, you know what the funny thing is, when you're talking about change, a lot of people may not want to change personally, but they do believe change is good. It's a weird conflict. It's like, I believe we need to change, but don't change me. But it's true. You know, I believe the agency's got to change in what they're doing, but don't change me in the process. Well, guys, you can't have one without the other. So having said that, how the change is communicated matters. And another thing, when it comes to defining our roles and responsibilities, if we know what our roles and responsibilities are, then technically we become more empowered to make decisions within those parameters of what's within our roles and responsibilities. So I really do think that also helps with the team kind of making decisions and moving forward, because they understand, okay, this is my responsibility. This is how my responsibility will affect people who have other responsibilities. So having said that, the more I understand my role and responsibilities, the more I understand the parameters in which I get to operate in, the more I'm willing to make decisions, because I'm aware of where those decisions can play out. Would you agree with that, Soto?
I absolutely agree. I mean, that's the ticket, right? If I know what my responsibility or what my role is, what it is, and the final outcome that we're looking for, what our goal is, then I can work within those parameters, like you just pointed out. But also, like you said, I love the way you said, you know, if we understand, right? Even if it's a change in policy, a change in the way we have to operate, if we understand it, right, then we're more apt to go along with it, right? In this generation, they always think about, we need to know the why. Why do we need to change? Why do we need to do it this way? Why, right? And if it's not an emergent situation, it is up to us, management, to be able to be like, hey, you know what? I can take the time out and explain the why, right? Because once I explain it to the staff and the communication is there, you're going to have more buy-in. So it's absolutely crucial that we do that, so that we have this great gelling team and a high performance team.
Yeah, and guys, so that's number one. That's the first characteristic. The second characteristic, I believe, I think this may be Soto's favorite, because again, Soto, I know the only reason I'm saying that, Soto, is I've worked with you in the past, and I believe this is something that you kind of modeled. I believe, and guys, by the way, a lot of these characteristics may bleed into each other, because again, you know, it's really about these four characteristics really have a lot of similarities that touch into each other. But having said that, it's where we're focusing. So, you know, that matters too. So where we're focusing on each characteristic. So this one, I know Soto is going to probably agree that this is definitely something that creates balance, knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, and I don't want you to think of, you know, weaknesses as something bad when we're talking about high efficient teams, high performing teams, right? The ability to recognize who in your team has a strength in a certain particular criteria, as opposed to they're not so strong in another area, is where you become a high performing team. Because a team being all together and gelling and being able to accomplish a goal is very important to know, okay, this individual is very strong in this area and can help us. And I know that as a leader, I don't have to worry about that particular person performing their task that's assigned to them, their role or their responsibility, right? But on the other end, I know that someone else, they may not be as well apt to perform a particular aspect or role that I need done. So I know where I can help them in improving, right? So cross-training our teammates is always vital, because I can put someone together with someone that's strong in a particular area and someone that's weaker in a particular area, just to get them both to be built up to where the team needs to be. Now, on the other hand, you as a leader recognizing that I have someone that's strong, like I'll give you an example. We went to do a massive search in a particular unit, right? Where everything had to be searched, every little detail had to be, and we were, in fact, we had some knowledge and some advanced knowledge that there were some particular things that we were looking for. It was drugs, it was gang paraphernalia, and some weapons that we were looking for in an entire unit. So I had a team of about 10 individuals that were going to help me perform this search. As I'm a sergeant. I'm looking at my schedule and I see that I only have whoever's assigned to me at that time. So I know each and individual person, officer that's assigned to me. I can see what their strengths are. I know who's good at searching. I know who's good at looking at things that you would normally not look at, and find ways that maybe an inmate would hide something to, make us not find it. I know who's good at making sure that our paperwork and our contraband is handled the proper way, so that evidence doesn't get destroyed or doesn't get thrown out at a hearing later on because the continuity of evidence wasn't right. So putting people in their place, knowing their strengths and weaknesses, is going to help you accomplish the goal and get that team working in a manner that is high performing.
Yeah, and even as you move it up on the administrative level and you deal with issues that involve multiple departments, what I tend to like to do on that is see which department has the most in stake, and then see if they could be trusted with the ball, and then have the other people, the other departments, support whatever that needs to be, that initiative. So, for example, let's say we got mass releases. Well, a big part of that's going to go to classification. That's their strength. But there's other things that need to be completed to kind of have that out there, to have that process of mass releases fully done and completed in the proper way. So you want to kind of let people know, like, this is the area that we want to help and support, but they're the ones that are going to lead the way. Sometimes it's good for a leader to kind of step aside a little bit, because you're in a leadership position doesn't mean that, I know this may sound crazy, doesn't mean that you automatically have the knowledge to run departments that you have no experience in. It's more of you have the knowledge to help facilitate, because okay, at this point, this is going to be a classification thing. So let's do this. They're going to need a lot of components. So all the departments here, we got to work together and support this lead, which would be classification. Also, a good thing about this too, when it comes to strengths and weaknesses, and it kind of falls into the same thing with defining roles and responsibilities. I think the organizational psychology term for that is role clarity. But the one thing about this is that if we know each other's strengths and weaknesses, so like what Soto said, if we can go down to the department side of things, let's say we're doing searches, and as a leader, I know people's strengths and weaknesses. I know where to go for help. Also, if the team knows it as well, they also know who to go for help. It's like pro-offered, if you will. It's like we're going into something, I know, okay, hey, by the way, this is this person's strength, so this is what we'll do, and the team knows it too. So we tend to move a lot quicker when we're all aware of it, because at the front line, we can make movements that at that moment that matter, especially if there's going to be, as we talked about before, pivots. Sometimes we could be strategic in how we deal with the pivot, or sometimes the pivot happens in the moment and we have to react. So the biggest way to move forward with that is understanding our strengths and weaknesses, all of us, not even just the leader, just the people to the right and left, and then making those adjustments on the fly. And again, I think this is more about balance. Would you agree, Soto? Is this a way to balance it out? I mean, it's okay to be vulnerable in certain areas, but as I said, it's a way to balance our vulnerabilities because no one's going to be perfect in every area of corrections, correct?
No, absolutely. And I like what the example that you give as far as um, knowing that someone's going to take the lead depending on the objective, depending on what the outcome needs to be. I like listening to my staff as well, right? Listening to the department if they're the ones that are being put in the forefront, or listening to our officers or our sergeants or our lieutenants if you're in the higher role, and listening to what they believe their strengths are, right? What they believe they're good at, and what they believe that they can be better at. I like taking the opportunity. Sometimes we have to do evaluations on our staff, right? And we always think about it, oh, this is more work. I just have to evaluate them once a year, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? That is a perfect opportunity for you to recognize what the strengths of an individual are, what their, things that they need to work on are, or what we like to call opportunities, right? Instead of a weakness, it's an opportunity, because that's what I need to work on in this following year to get better at, and give them that guidance that they need so that your team continues to build and becomes better and better and better.
And guys, the cool thing about this dialogue is it's something that we need at this moment, because it also not just about responsibility, but as we talk about the next part, when it comes to trust and respect for each other, it also teaches us a level of accountability for each other. And that kind of brings us into the next characteristic. Good high performing teams, they trust and respect each other. I want to mention something. I can start off with this to kind of feed into the dialogue that Soto's going to kick off. This is really about psychological safety. This is really about us feeling safe within our environment here. And one good thing about trust and respecting for each other is kind of going back to the strengths and weaknesses, is knowing that we're all vulnerable. Even as a leader, you have vulnerabilities, and you can't expect your team to express their vulnerabilities if you yourself expect that you have to be perfect and not allow the team to know that you're vulnerable. Because believe it or not, you may not tell them, but they know it. Trust and believe they know it. When you get into these higher positions, most likely you have some really good strengths, but you're not perfect. I mean, usually we actually wind up having a couple of strengths that the department said, wow, they really excel at this, but we need to balance that out. And I noticed that too, recently when they, just in general, I don't want to say anything specific, but when they partner the ones and twos at a facility, so the person running the facility and then their conciliary, how do you say that word, Soto?
Conciliary? I mean,
conciliary, whatever it is, their advisor, whatever it is they're going to partner someone that balances each other. They're not going to put people with the same strengths or the same weaknesses. It doesn't make any sense. They're going to build a balance, because technically these two people connected are what's going to be utilized to run a balanced facility. Now, with that said, the good thing about having a trustful and respected environment, first off, this is really brought by the leader. The leader is the one that can establish trust, because you want to have open communication. You want to have dialogue. You want people to know that it's okay to be vulnerable, because this is how we work together, how we balance things out. But one of the things that's mentioned here is that when you have when you have a strong sense of trust and respect for each other, there's a good chance that there's good communication and honest communication happening at the front line, and communication that's going to help evolve the mission. So basically, you're going to have staff that may be willing to take risks, because they know that even if they fail, there's going to be feedback and growth involved. It's not going to be about pointing the finger and blaming one another. It's more about, okay, we made a mistake. How do we move forward from this mistake? The key here, again, is not being afraid to fail, take risks, speaking up. And it also says, when it comes to this, the trust and respect, when we go through something major at a correctional facility and all eyes go on us, we have a tendency to divide, which is something that we should not be doing. Leaders will say, well, policy was correct and someone violated it. And then the front line will be like, policy wasn't enough. And this is how management doesn't have our back. And we go through all this divide when at this time we should be together. So one thing about having trust and respect for each other is that we don't shift the blame. We don't point the finger. We come back together as a team, because it's not about covering your own ass. This is about, what can we do? We made a mistake. Now we have to ensure that mistake doesn't happen again. And the one way that doesn't occur is by pointing the finger and nobody taking responsibility. Someone has to take responsibility for the mistake so we can go ahead and make good movement forward. But in an environment where there's no trust and there's no respect for each other, there is no responsibility for the mistake. It's just, nope, Soto did it, nope, Gangi did it. And at the end, we don't evolve. What's your thoughts on trust and respect, Soto?
It's one of those important elements within a team, right? When you're trying to build your facility, your establishment, people have to learn how to trust each other, and you have to build on that trust, right? So it's not a one and end, right? One and done. Oh, I'm knowledgeable about the policies. I'm knowledgeable about how to handle scenarios or disturbances or, just a simple scheduling. It's about, yes, I'm trying to gain more and more trust off my team and the team trusting me, and I trust them in doing them, performing their duties. But it's an ever evolving thing. We have to build upon it more and more and more. We shouldn't be pointing fingers, because once you point fingers after an incident or an occurrence, that's what's chopping away at the trust that we have for each other. You don't have my back, I don't have your back, right? So you have to ensure that this is an ongoing thing. Trusting each other, right, can only be built upon by, it's multifaceted, right? I need to know that my leader is knowledgeable, that is a decisive leader, that can handle stress, that can be, proactive instead of reactive to things as they happen. And then the leader has to look at their team and say, okay, I need to trust my team that when I give out an assignment or we're confronted with a new change, a policy, or something that's that driven that we have to move and change on the fly, that my team is well apt to do that, right? That trust continues to build, right? And as we go around and as we go and learn from each other, the trust just continues to grow.
Right. And I want to add something here too, that as we were having the discussion, I think this makes sense. Trust comes from an environment that's constructive and not punitive. I just thought of it just now, but I think it makes sense. I mean, if you have these supervisors that are in these positions that kind of micromanage because they're afraid that, they maybe image, I'm afraid to look bad or whatever it is, and kind of micromanagement messes with momentum as well. But what happens here is when shit hits the fan, they kind of go to CYA mode and they're quick to punitive, because to them, that's the best way to alleviate themselves or isolate themselves from the issue, as opposed to good leaders who will look to be constructive, take the time and, try to do what they can to educate. But then again, that involves them going in with the failure as well. That's a we approach, which is what we need. I think the constructive approach builds so much trust, because if you're not that way and you go straight to being punitive, people start hiding their mistakes. They start not telling you when things are going on, and there's no way you as a leader there's no way you as a leader can know what's happening if your people don't trust you enough to tell you. So again, I think the trust and respect come from a shift from punitive to constructive. Would you agree with that, Sort? I mean, I know you were a very constructive leader, correct? The last resort for you was more, the last resort would have been punitive in almost most measures that you dealt with.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't have to go too far. I can talk to you about an incident that happened just this week. We had a sprinkler malfunction at our facility, right? It got so cold that the pipe burst. And our maintenance department did their best to, respond to the incident, try to shut off the water to the sprinkler system. And they thought they did a great job, but the water continued to come out. And one of the leaders in the facility was calling me on the phone frantic, saying, hey, there's still water coming out. They don't know how to shut this off. The vendor had to come in, the outside vendor had to come in and finally finish everything off. She wrote a page-long report about the incident and then forwarded to me as the acting director, because she's looking for me to do something. Now, these are people that we work with year in and year out, day in and day out, right? And it is a situation that usually doesn't happen in a facility where we have this pipe burst because of outside forces, the weather being so cold. And I'm looking at and I'm reading it, and I said, you know what? What she's looking for me to do is to discipline my staff, where I don't see it that way. I went to my staff, talked to them, asked them what happened, what occurred, what did you do, what steps did you take? And then you get to find out, that they weren't very well versed in how to shut off the water to the sprinkler system. They knew how to do other stuff, the gas line, the electrical panel, the regular water to the facility. But the sprinkler system is something more that doesn't happen every day, and they didn't have it. So I took it as an opportunity to not discipline them, but actually train them. Let's do this. Let's get retrained on how to do this. Let's find out how, and we did it in one day. Let's also have a procedure that's written, that's pictures taken of locations of shutoff valves where we need to do. And that way you build your team. You build the trust. You have their back. You didn't look the first step to discipline them for an incident that didn't cause really serious damage. It didn't cost a life. It didn't cost anything other than a learning opportunity. So that's why, I mean, that's something so simple, but you can relate that to anything in our corrections field.
Yeah, and by the way, we're talking about high-risk situations as well. Like I remember a scenario where there was an officer that lost his keys, and he's spending all this time scrambling, looking for the keys because he's concerned about getting in trouble when technically the immediate thing should have been reported. But he was so concerned about getting in trouble that he, tried to exhaust all effort. And, but having said that, once the keys are out of your sight, even if you get them later on, they've still been out of your sight. You don't know what those keys, what someone's done with those keys. Could they have made copies? You don't know. But the person was that the problem was the person here didn't trust the leader. He knew that the moment they said it, they're going to be quick to be punitive and all this other stuff. So I get the officers should know better and report it right away, but we also have instincts to be in survival mode. We don't want to get in trouble. We avoid pain. So we need to do what we can to make sure that that person has a safe route to report those concerns. And I'll go ahead, Soto.
I just wanted to say, I like that example, and I've seen other examples where, officers have even attempted to falsify documentation after a use of force incident because of the repercussions. They figure if I put down that I struck the inmate in the head area or this area or that area, that I'm going to get in trouble. So what they do is they falsify the document by saying, I did the least amount of force, or reasonable force was used, and they wouldn't go into specifics when sometimes they're justified in the use of force that they opted to use, but because they're afraid of what's going to happen to them, that they're going to get disciplined or fired even, that they falsify documentation. Then at the end, they actually get disciplined for what they didn't write as opposed to what they should have wrote.
Right. And you know what's funny is how many of us would really take the time and see that as a systematic concern. Like we would be quick to judge that person for the actions that they've done. But then a few of us will probably go back and say, what motivated that, though? This was a good officer. What motivated them to not want to report it right away? And it could be the culture that we're leading right now where, we have a culture of quick to discipline, quick to be punitive. And now you have good people that go into survival mode. And again, we're not minimizing their part in it all, but you also have to step up and say, what made this person shift? And I love that because, again, we'll look to react and write it up and do whatever it is. But having said that, it could be a systematic concern. It could be a higher level where the supervisor is not trusted to be constructive, that they treat everything as something punitive. And guys, here's the funny thing too. And I don't know if I want to blame the unions for this, to be honest with you, but I know that we look for equality when it comes to, let's say, punitive measures. I get it. But there are certain people that, let's say, have a history of bad behavior that we're at that level with them. And then there are people that don't have that history of bad behavior where we could be more constructive with. So let's say you have two officers that commit to the same concern, and we may decide to go up on this one, but kind of be a little bit different with this one. And the union may come in and say, well, what's going on? You got to be fair with both. Why not go this way? It's like, I get what they're trying to say, but having said that, this person has a pattern of history that's negative, that we've exhausted every constructive measure. Now, at this point, this person's a liability where this person can still be saved. This person's a good officer, made a mistake, and we actually see it as a mistake from our end, where based on the person's history. And the problem is don't do this. Again, if you're a union or defending the case, whatever it is, don't bring a good officer to that level. If you have a good officer or a good staff member that, let's say, does make a mistake, and around the same time, someone else makes the same mistake, but they have a bad pattern of history, and we're kind of up with this one and down with this one, don't make us, because don't make us even it out, because at that point, if you're going to force us to do that, then we may elevate it up, because the liability for that one person we can't forgive anymore. So what you're going to wind up doing is having us bring up the one that really doesn't deserve it. But you're forcing us to do that, because if we have to get rid of the liability, then that forces us to elevate this one. And I think that happens a lot. And now what would have been a constructive environment now becomes a punitive environment that now gets generalized. And I mean, am I making sense on that, Soto? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, you are absolutely making sense. You know, the unions in some of our departments are very instrumental in, you know, getting us to the forefront, making sure that they're protecting our field, that they're protecting our officers and our supervisors as well. They have their job to do. But you, like you said, in performing their duties, sometimes they get misled by, hey, I got to defend everybody equally. Everybody should get a fair shake. That's always going to be the case. But because they don't understand, or they don't try to understand that discipline, this is basically another realm and another topic that I love to talk about. You know, people think about discipline as a bad thing, and that's not what its intention is there for, no matter what field you're in, whether you're in corrections or any other field. Discipline, you know, as we use it as a last resort, people think that, oh, that's just bad, right? That nobody likes confrontations, nobody likes, you know, to do that to people. But what you don't understand is that dealing with unions, dealing with incidents that occur, dealing with things that may lead to discipline, what discipline is intended in doing is to correct the behavior so that the employee becomes a better employee. And once you understand that, then you can kind of comprehend that, okay, it is a progressive discipline that needs to be followed. And those that have a very bad record and their disciplinary process is getting worse and worse and worse and worse, then you deal with that individual. The person that just made a mistake can't be treated the same way as someone that has already a history. So I understand where you're coming from. But that's also another thing about trusting your administration and trusting that they're making the best decision when it comes to discipline as well.
Yeah, it goes back to effort versus the outcome. I mean, the effort's never really seen.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, it's not. It's the outcome that's seen. And having said that, what brought us to this point where we had to become punitive? And yes, we will devote a topic to that, because that could also be part of your breakout sessions, because that is not. And that's something that should be shared more about, you know, the discipline process, and letting people understand from a management perspective of why these routes are taken. And hopefully even leaders there know what you just said. Discipline is really more of a constructive effort. Correct. Until there's liability, until you make an effort. I can't save this employee. And there are going to be certain incidences where you can rebuild trust. And there are certain incidences that are so dramatic that you can't. There's just nothing you can do to rebuild trust in that individual. And at that point, if I can't trust the individual, then the public can't. So mind you, there are going to be certain things you can forgive, because, again, human error, and we could build back trust and effectiveness. But there are certain things more related to unethical behavior, whatever, that the trust is gone. There's nothing you can do, because the liability has now become so great. And that's why the progressive discipline may not be seen, because at that point, there's nothing I can do to build some level of trust back into that individual and them to be effective, at least in the eyes of the public. Right. The last one is, and this is one of my favorite ones, Soto, and I'll have you go first, but this is kind of called task significance. And basically it deals with their work fits the mission. Now, mind you guys, I want to explain something real quick. The mission is what we do every day to meet the vision. So basically, at an individual level, our mission may be to help the team accomplish something that helps the team accomplish something for the vision. So you get it? So, but it all has to be connected. It has to, what I think the term is task significant, which means that you're showing people the value of their work, even in the most minute of things that they have to accomplish. Because again, everything plays out to the higher picture, the higher mission. And one of the things that we talk about here is it's connecting the individual to the team, and then connecting the team to the mission or the vision. And it also is, you want to show people who is affected by the work being done, because most likely when we commit to a higher purpose, it's more of our service to others. And having a why, having to understand that connects people it drives them, it motivates them. So sometimes it's good as a leader to remind people of how their work affects, the people that maybe the public, maybe the inmate population, maybe the peers, something at the greatest of levels that may not always be seen at the lowest of levels. What's your thoughts on that, Soto?
Yeah, we work in a facility or in an industry that kind of relies on doing the same thing day in and day out unless you're confronted with an emergency, right? We come in and it doesn't matter whether it's the correction officer that comes in every day and they work the same housing unit and the same things happen every day, doing your counts, letting out rec, ensuring people get to work or school, and then come back, feed them, do mass, and go back and do it again, right? And it becomes a routine. The classification department, they come in every day, they have to review files, set up meetings, and it becomes a routine. And then all of a sudden, you forget what the actual vision or mission, what happens. You're just part of a wheel, of a cog of an entire industry that your job is significant because it relates to other particulars, right? If I work in medical, right, and giving out health to our inmate population, or I work in the education department and I'm giving just a regular GED class so someone can get their GED or attempt to get their GED, you get kind of closed into this is all I do. But it's not. It's a bigger picture. You have to step back and look at every single part or every single job that is being performed creates a whole industry that fits into the mission that we're doing. It fits into our whole vision. It fits into our ultimate goal of the Department of Corrections and helping with rehabilitation, reintegration. So it's very, very important.
And I love what you mentioned too about the routine work, guys. We get burned out by the routine work. I know a lot of people are talking about hours. Like, I worked 80 hours this week, I'm burned out. It's really not the amount of hours that burn people out. It's usually the work that has to be accomplished that just never ends. I mean, you may be present for 80 hours. I get it. But your amount of work may not be 80 hours. Most likely what burns people out is like what Soto said, the work that just keeps on coming. It doesn't stop. It doesn't give you a chance to breathe. I'm done with this one project. Now I have another project. And, I mean, I like talking about classification. I mean, every day, they're preparing for releases, status checks, and, the list goes on for them. And they never get completion. It's like, okay, I'm done with this, but now I got to get to the next one. Now I got to the next one. Now I get to the next one. And that does start to burn people out. And one of the good things to kind of help them, because that work's going to keep on coming, is to recognize, even if it's the routine work, and to tell them how that routine work plays out in the bigger picture. I think that's where task significance comes in. It's like, I know you're doing with this daily task, but let me tell you how this task relates to the goal, and try to let them kind of understand that their work has value, it has a purpose. And with that said, I think that really does help a team, because we can all connect to that same mission, that same vision, and then together work to help complete that. But it's really the mission and the vision that provides value to the people that are working it. And hopefully the value aligns with their personal beliefs. I mean, that's another thing too. I mean, sometimes the belief of the work being done and the reason for it may not connect with your personal beliefs. And I'll be honest with you, if that's the case, I know it's maybe hard to say, but I would advise you not to stay in this line of work, because you're going to get burned out if you can't find a way to connect to it on a personal level. That's why it's good for leaders to tell people who's affected by the work and what that service is doing for others on a bigger scale, to give people a better way to connect to that vision, connect to that value, and then be more motivated to work as a team to complete that. Hey, Soto, you have anything you'd like to say in closing? I thought this was a great topic, a good topic for a breakout session.
Yeah, excellent topic. I enjoyed speaking on these issues and how to be better at each particular framework, and those little breakouts that we talked about, those little points. And then this last point, work fits the mission, telling your staff or having those staff meetings that, on our compliance team, it's become a mandate now that leaders have to have a monthly meeting with their subordinates, with their workers, just so that you're the one that, can keep them on track for that vision, can keep them on track and motivated, right, to work together. And that's your opportunity to talk about the work that you do matters. The work that you do kind of, you have to bring it in and bring that concept together and saying what you do, whether you think it's not valuable or not, it is. Because of what you do, it allows the vision, the mission to get complete. Right. So that's why sometimes those meetings are very important. Communication is always important. But to get that high performance team, guys, work on it, build on it, continue to do it. Right. And when you have a question, feel free to reach out to us. That's what we're here for, to give you that, because we've been through these situations. We've worked with teams that are not so great and built them to be a high performing team. And we have those answers for you. So we love to share.
Yeah, and guys, by the way, Soto said a key word that connects all 4 characteristics. He said communication.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you think about it, all the things we talked about, defining our roles, strengths and weaknesses, trust and respect for each other, mission. How does that happen without communication? I mean, I don't want to just gloss over that one word, but a very powerful word that connects it all together. And again, just want to kind of reiterate, this isn't about talent, guys. As we clearly said before, talent is not what truly defines a team. It's really about communication with each other and understanding that we're in it together. I think that's the key, and that's where the mission and vision come into play. But again, if you can't align true value and beliefs personally with the mission and the vision of the agency, then maybe it is, as hard as it may sound, it is maybe a better bet for you to kind of find work elsewhere, because in the end, that's what leaders use to motivate a good, effective team to work together. We try to find similar beliefs and values, and we don't want a cancer. We don't want someone that's disgruntled to, ruin that momentum, because once you create momentum, all you got to do as a leader now is just manage it and maintain it. But you can never create momentum if you have one bad component, because at any moment, shit can go downhill with that same type of momentum, just in the reverse direction. As always, guys, the show is taped. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.